It's over for you. Your soulmate medical report is on its way, proving that you soulmate is my beloved child. The report is already on its way, but the most important thing inside it is not what anyone expected. Your soulmate thought this would be an ordinary medical update, something private, something they could read quietly and put away. But one unexpected detail changed the entire meaning of what they had been told. And strangely, their first thought was not about themselves. It was about you. They stared at the information longer than they expected, remembering conversations, unexplained moments, and a decision they had been postponing for far too long. Something suddenly made sense. Yet there is one part of this report they haven't seen clearly enough to understand. Don't skip, because when that missing piece reaches them, it may force your soulmate to finally tell you what they have been keeping private. What makes this even more surprising is what happened before the report was completed. Your soulmate had already sensed that something needed attention, but they refused to jump to conclusions. They wanted facts. Clear answers. Nothing imagined, nothing exaggerated. So they waited. And during that waiting, they began looking at their connection with you differently. They remembered how often they had pulled back whenever things became emotionally real. They remembered the questions you never asked and the answers they never volunteered. Then came an unexpected update. The report required one final review before everything could be considered complete. That single delay unsettled them, not because it automatically meant something terrible, but because they realized how much they still needed to say to you. Stay till the end, because the real revelation is becoming less about a document and more about the truth your soulmate can no longer avoid. And now the final review is moving closer, carrying the detail that could change the next conversation between you. Your soulmate has begun preparing themselves for two possibilities, yet both lead toward the same decision. They don't want silence between you anymore. There is something about their personal situation they believe you deserve to hear directly from them rather than through assumptions, rumors, or half-finished explanations. But here is where the mystery deepens. Someone involved in reviewing the information noticed a detail your soulmate had overlooked, something that may explain why certain pieces of their recent experience never seem to fit together. It does not reveal everything yet. The complete meaning still depends on what comes next. But your soulmate now knows enough to realize that once this report reaches them, pretending nothing has changed may no longer be possible. Something huge is waiting for you, because the overlooked detail points toward a truth about your soulmate that could completely change what they choose to tell you next. The next detail changed the atmosphere completely. Your soulmate had expected the final review to bring certainty, but instead it brought a question they had never thought to ask. One section of the report needed additional context before anyone could interpret it properly, and suddenly those strange little moments from the past began returning to their mind. The tired days they dismissed. The appointments they barely mentioned. The times they changed the subject when you asked whether everything was okay. None of those moments proves anything by itself, and your soulmate knows that. But together, they created a pattern worth understanding. That is why they made an unexpected decision. Before telling anyone else what was happening, they wanted to speak with you. Don't skip, because the reason they chose you first reveals something far deeper than anything written on that page. For months, your soulmate has been trying to appear completely composed around you. They didn't want uncertainty to become the center of your connection, and they especially didn't want you worrying before they had reliable answers. But now they are beginning to understand that keeping everything private created another problem. You could sense the distance without knowing its reason. You may have wondered why their energy changed, why certain conversations ended too quickly, or why they seemed ready to say something important and then stopped. The report is finally pushing them toward the conversation they kept postponing. And there is another twist. The final information does not simply answer the question they originally had. It points toward something they may need to discuss further with a qualified medical professional before drawing any conclusion. That realization has made your soulmate surprisingly calm, because uncertainty is finally being replaced by a responsible next step. But the biggest shift happened afterward. Your soulmate stopped staring at the report and began thinking about what this moment revealed about their feelings for you. When uncertainty entered their life, your name kept returning to their mind, not because they expected you to solve anything, but because you were the person they wanted beside them when the truth became clear. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you, because they have now prepared the first words they want to say when they finally reach out. Yet before that conversation happens, one final piece still has to be clarified. And according to the information they received, that clarification could completely change how they understand the original report. Your soulmate thought they were waiting for one simple answer. Instead, they are about to discover why the most important conclusion was never written in the first version at all. Then came the clarification your soulmate had been waiting for. And it immediately changed the direction of everything. The earlier report had never been the complete picture. One result needed proper interpretation alongside additional information, which meant the conclusion your soulmate had quietly feared or assumed could not responsibly be made from that first page alone. For a moment, they simply sat there, absorbing what that meant. They had spent days preparing themselves for an answer that wasn't actually confirmed. But something else happened during that waiting period. They discovered exactly who they wanted to turn toward when life became uncertain. You. Not because you could interpret a medical report, but because thinking about you made them realize how many important truths they had left unsaid. And now they have decided that once they receive the final explanation, silence between you is ending. What they do next may surprise you even more. Instead of guessing, searching for frightening possibilities, or allowing other people's opinions to shape the story, your soulmate chooses to wait for a qualified professional to explain what the information actually means. That decision brings a strange sense of relief. Stay till the end, because while they are waiting, they begin writing down everything they want to tell you. One sentence becomes two. Two become an entire confession they never planned to make. They admit that their distance wasn't always rejection. Sometimes it was uncertainty. Sometimes they pulled away because they didn't know how to let someone important see them without all the confidence they usually showed the world. And buried inside those words is one admission that could completely change how you understand their recent behavior. That admission has nothing to do with asking you to rescue them. It is far more personal than that. Your soulmate realizes they have been postponing the future because they believed they needed every part of their life perfectly understood before moving closer to you. This report shattered that illusion. Life doesn't always hand people perfect certainty before asking them to make meaningful choices. Don't skip. Something huge is waiting for you, because your soulmate has now made one of those choices. Whatever the final medical explanation turns out to be, they intend to tell you the truth about why they disappeared emotionally whenever your connection became serious. But just as they prepare to reach out, another message arrives about the report, one containing a detail they hadn't been expecting at all. And after reading the first few lines, your soulmate realizes the conversation they planned with you may have to begin very differently. That unexpected message did not give your soulmate the dramatic answer they had imagined, it gave them something more important: context. The new information explained that one part of the earlier report could look confusing when viewed alone and needed to be considered with the rest of their medical history and professional guidance. Suddenly, the story they had built inside their own mind began falling apart. They realized how quickly uncertainty had turned into assumptions. But one feeling remained completely unchanged. Through every hour of waiting, they kept thinking about you. And now, instead of contacting you with fear or speculation, they want to come to you with honesty. There is something they have hidden behind their silence for longer than you realize, and this report has finally made hiding it feel impossible. Stay till the end, because the confession forming inside them is becoming bigger than the report itself. Your soulmate begins remembering the exact moment they first decided to keep this situation private. They told themselves they were protecting you from unnecessary worry until they knew more. Yet underneath that explanation was another truth: they were afraid of being seen during an uncertain chapter of their life. Around you, they wanted to appear certain, strong, and completely in control. But the waiting changed that. They started understanding that genuine closeness cannot exist only during perfect moments. So they rewrote the message they had prepared for you. The first version was careful and distant. The second was warmer. The third finally sounded like them. It admitted that their recent behavior had never told the complete story. Don't skip. One particular sentence in that message explains why they kept stepping closer to you and then suddenly pulling away. And it has almost nothing to do with how they truly feel about you. Here is where everything takes another turn. Before sending that message, your soulmate receives confirmation that the report still requires a proper conversation with their healthcare professional before any definite meaning should be attached to it. Instead of panicking, they choose patience. But emotionally, something has already been decided. They no longer want unanswered questions to control what happens between you. They want facts about their health and honesty about their feelings, without mixing the two together. Something huge is waiting for you, because that distinction gives them the courage to finally finish the message they have rewritten again and again. Their finger hovers over the send button. They read the final lines once more. And hidden near the end is the confession you were never supposed to hear this soon. The real reason they kept you at a distance was not because they wanted a life without you, it was because they were afraid of what choosing you would require them to reveal next. What they were afraid to reveal was never a dramatic diagnosis or some secret conclusion hidden inside a medical document. It was something far more human. Your soulmate had been carrying uncertainty about themselves, and somewhere along the way, they convinced themselves that you deserved only the most polished version of who they were. So whenever your connection became deeper, they stepped backward. Whenever they wanted to tell you what was really happening, they found another reason to wait. But now the report has forced them to confront the flaw in that thinking. A medical result can require clarification. A difficult question can require patience. But their feelings for you cannot remain permanently trapped behind unfinished explanations. And that is why the message sitting on their screen suddenly becomes the most important thing they have written in months. Then your soulmate adds one sentence they had deleted from every previous version. It says, in essence, that their silence was never meant to make you question your importance. They had simply been trying to understand their own situation before bringing you into it. Stay till the end, because immediately after writing those words, something changes inside them. They stop trying to predict your reaction. They stop rewriting every sentence until it sounds perfect. For once, they choose honesty over control. Meanwhile, they still plan to discuss the report properly with a qualified medical professional rather than guessing what any individual result means. That responsible choice gives them room to separate two things they had accidentally tangled together: uncertainty about their health and certainty about what you mean to them. And once those become separate, the next decision becomes almost unavoidable. Your soulmate finally presses send, but not on the message you expected. At the last second, they remove most of the explanation and send something much simpler, asking whether the two of you can have a real conversation soon. Don't skip. That short message carries more weight than the long confession they almost sent, because they have decided some truths deserve to be spoken directly instead of hidden behind a screen. But there is still one piece you don't know. Before reaching out, your soulmate wrote a private question for themselves: if the final medical explanation turns out to be manageable and completely different from what they originally feared, what excuse will they have left for keeping you at a distance? They already know the answer. None. And that realization leads them toward a decision about you that they never expected to make this soon. That decision arrives with surprising clarity. Your soulmate no longer wants to wait for life to become perfectly organized before being honest with you. The report may still need professional interpretation, and they refuse to turn incomplete information into conclusions, but emotionally they have already learned something undeniable. Every time uncertainty made them question what mattered most, their thoughts returned to the same person, you. So they decide the upcoming conversation will not begin with dramatic claims about the report. It will begin with the truth about their behavior. They want to explain why they became distant, why certain conversations suddenly stopped, and why they sometimes acted as though your connection meant less than it actually did. Something huge is waiting for you, because once they made that decision, another memory surfaced, one involving the exact moment they first realized their feelings had become impossible to dismiss. It happened during an ordinary conversation between you, one that probably seemed insignificant at the time. You said something simple that made them feel understood without having to explain every complicated thought inside them. They carried that moment afterward, but instead of moving closer, they became more cautious. The stronger their feelings became, the more they worried that revealing every uncertain part of their life might change how you saw them. Now they recognize the contradiction. They wanted genuine closeness while hiding the very vulnerability that genuine closeness requires. Don't skip. That realization changes the message they plan to give you completely. They are no longer preparing to say, "Wait until everything is perfect." They are preparing to say, "Here is what I actually know, here is what I still need clarified, and here is what I should have told you long ago." But there is one sentence they are still struggling to say aloud. And that sentence has been rewritten several times because it carries the real turning point. Your soulmate wants you to know that whatever their medical professional ultimately explains about the report, they don't want uncertainty to make decisions about your connection anymore. They want those decisions to come from honesty, patience, and what the two of you actually choose. Stay till the end, because just before they practice saying those words again, another update appears. This time, it confirms that the next step is not another mysterious document arriving without explanation. It is a conversation where the results can finally be understood in context. Your soulmate feels relief, but then something unexpected happens. Instead of focusing entirely on what they might hear, they open the unfinished confession again and add one final line. It reveals exactly what they hope happens between you after this uncertainty is finally cleared, and once you hear that line, their months of distance may suddenly make sense. The final line they added was simple, but it exposed everything they had been trying to hide. They wanted a chance to stop running from a connection that mattered to them. Your soulmate stared at those words because writing them made the truth impossible to soften. Their distance had never erased their feelings. If anything, every unanswered question had shown them how deeply your presence had become connected to the future they secretly imagined. Still, they knew one boundary mattered. The medical report could only be properly explained by their healthcare professional, and they would not turn uncertainty into a dramatic conclusion. But the emotional lesson was already clear. They had spent too long believing they needed perfect circumstances before choosing honesty. Now they were ready to speak while life was still imperfect. And there was one more thing they intended to admit, something they had never even written in the message. Hours before the conversation about the report, your soulmate begins mentally rehearsing what they will say to you. At first, they imagine explaining everything chronologically. Then they stop. That would only hide the most important truth beneath details. So they choose three simple things: what they know, what they don't know yet, and what they feel about you. Don't skip, because that third answer surprises even them. They realize they are no longer asking themselves whether this connection matters. They are asking what happens if they finally treat it like it does. Suddenly, old moments take on new meaning: the hesitation before saying goodbye, the conversations they wanted to continue, the times they almost reached out and stopped themselves. Those moments were not proof of some mysterious destiny. They were evidence of a choice your soulmate repeatedly postponed. And now the report has placed that choice directly in front of them. Then the professional conversation finally begins, and your soulmate listens carefully instead of trying to predict every sentence. The information is discussed in context, questions are answered, and the next appropriate steps become clearer. But when the conversation ends, your soulmate does something unexpected. They don't immediately disappear into their thoughts like they normally would. They reach for their phone and open your message. Stay till the end, because this time they are not preparing another vague explanation. They are ready to tell you that the uncertainty surrounding the report made them recognize something they could no longer ignore. They don't want fear of the unknown deciding how close they allow themselves to become to you. Their fingers begin typing, then suddenly stop. Because just before sending anything, your soulmate realizes there is one truth that should not arrive as a text at all. They want you to hear it in their voice, and the first words they plan to say could completely change what. That need for clarity changes the entire tone of what your soulmate is preparing to say. They are no longer approaching you with a rehearsed story designed to produce one specific reaction. They are coming with facts where facts exist, questions where questions remain, and honesty about the feelings they spent too long hiding. The medical report still matters, but only in the way it should, as personal health information to understand responsibly with qualified medical guidance. It does not predict the future between you. Your soulmate finally understands that distinction, and strangely, it makes them braver. They cannot control every result, every circumstance, or even your response. But they can control whether they continue hiding. Don't skip, because once they accept that, they make a decision that changes the conversation before it even begins. They will not ask you for an immediate answer. Instead, your soulmate wants to give you something they rarely gave you before: space to process the truth without pressure. They know their previous distance may have left questions that cannot disappear in one conversation. So they plan to explain themselves clearly, acknowledge where they should have communicated better, and then allow you to decide what comes next. Yet there is one thing they desperately hope you understand. Their silence was never proof that you meant nothing. In many moments, the opposite was closer to the truth. The more meaningful the connection felt, the more vulnerable they became, and vulnerability was exactly what they had spent years learning to avoid. Stay till the end, because admitting this changes something inside them. For the first time, they stop seeing vulnerability as losing control. They begin seeing it as the price of finally being known. Then your soulmate looks again at the report that started this entire chain of events, and the strangest realization settles over them. They once believed that document was going to reveal the biggest truth of this chapter. Now they know it merely opened the door. The deeper truth is what happened while they were waiting. Every excuse they used to delay honesty became impossible to defend. Something huge is waiting for you, because your soulmate is no longer preparing only to explain the past. They are preparing to ask a question about the future. Not a dramatic promise. Not a demand for certainty. Something quieter and far more meaningful. They want to know whether there is still room for the two of you to begin again with nothing hidden behind silence. But before they ask, they intend to reveal one final detail about the moment they first realized they might lose that opportunity, and it explains why they suddenly stopped waiting. The moment they realized they could lose that opportunity had nothing to do with the report itself. It happened when your soulmate imagined finally receiving every answer they had been waiting for, looking up from the page, and discovering that too much time had passed between you. That thought landed harder than expected. They had been treating time as though it would patiently wait while they sorted through every uncertainty, but relationships do not remain frozen while someone decides whether to speak. Conversations fade. People adjust. Silence starts creating its own meaning. And suddenly your soulmate understood that the greatest mistake would be waiting until everything felt perfectly safe before telling you what was true. The report could be clarified through proper medical guidance. But the distance between you required something only they could provide: honesty. Don't skip, because that realization finally pushes them beyond the point where another excuse can stop them. So your soulmate begins preparing for the conversation differently. No dramatic announcement. No attempt to make you responsible for what they are experiencing. They simply want to tell you why they disappeared emotionally when you deserved clarity. And then they want to say the sentence they have avoided for months: I cared more than I knew how to handle. Those words frighten them because they remove every convenient explanation they once used. They reveal that behind the mixed signals was someone struggling to separate genuine feelings from their fear of being fully known. Stay till the end, because your soulmate has also realized something about you. They cannot assume you have been standing still waiting for this confession. You have your own feelings, boundaries, questions, and choices. For the first time, they are ready to respect all of them without trying to control the outcome. And that is exactly why their next move carries so much weight. Your soulmate decides that after explaining themselves, they will ask you one simple question and genuinely listen to the answer: what do you want now? They know your response could lead somewhere beautiful, somewhere unexpected, or simply toward the clarity both of you should have had long ago. Something huge is waiting for you, because asking that question means they are finally surrendering the illusion that they can plan every chapter before living it. The medical report may have triggered this awakening, but it cannot write the ending. Neither can fear. Your soulmate now understands that what happens next depends on two people being honest enough to choose freely. Yet there is one last thing they intend to tell you before asking what you want, a private truth about the future they once pictured with you, and why they never had the courage to admit just how detailed that picture had become. What stopped them that day was not a lack of feeling. It was the fear that they had already waited too long. Your soulmate opened your conversation, typed several words, erased them, and then convinced themselves that reaching out would only create more confusion. They imagined you asking the questions they had been avoiding, and at that point they still didn't have clear answers, not about the report, not about why they had withdrawn, and certainly not about what they wanted from you. So they chose silence again. But now they recognize what that choice actually did. Silence didn't protect either of you from uncertainty, it simply made uncertainty louder. And when they remember that moment today, they wish they had trusted you enough to say something simple and truthful: I don't have every answer yet, but I don't want you misunderstanding why I've been distant. Don't skip, because realizing this has completely changed what they plan to do next. Your soulmate no longer wants to impress you with perfect words. They want to give you the information that matters and allow the conversation to breathe. They will keep medical questions where they belong, with qualified professionals who can interpret the report responsibly, and they will keep their emotional truth where it belongs, between the two of you. That separation gives them a confidence they didn't have before. Stay till the end, because they have also prepared themselves for something difficult but necessary. You may tell them their silence hurt. You may ask why they didn't trust you sooner. You may need time before deciding whether you want them closer again. And instead of becoming defensive, your soulmate wants to listen. They finally understand that revealing their reasons does not erase the impact of their choices. If they truly want a different future with you, they have to make room for your experience of the past. Then comes the most unexpected realization yet. Your soulmate thought this entire chapter was about discovering what a report would prove about them. But the document could never prove the thing they were actually searching for: whether they were ready to stop hiding when life became uncertain. That answer had to come from their choices. Something huge is waiting for you, because they have finally made one. They will speak. They will listen. And they will stop asking silence to carry messages it was never capable of delivering. Yet before they contact you, your soulmate returns to one memory they have never shared, the moment they first realized losing your connection would affect them far more deeply than they wanted to admit. It happened after something you said almost casually, something you probably forgot within minutes. They never forgot it. And when they finally tell you why, you may understand exactly when their feelings stopped being something they could simply walk away from. That forgotten moment was almost painfully ordinary. You said something that made your soulmate feel seen without asking them to perform, explain, or pretend everything in their life was perfectly arranged. They smiled, moved the conversation forward, and gave you no indication that your words had landed differently. But later, when they were alone, they replayed that moment. It was the first time they seriously wondered what it would feel like to let you know the version of them that existed behind all that control. Then fear answered before courage could. They began creating distance precisely when closeness started meaning something. Now, after everything surrounding the medical report, that memory has returned with startling clarity. Don't skip, because your soulmate finally understands why they never forgot what you said. It represented the kind of connection they wanted, even while their actions were pushing it away. And now they are confronting the question they avoided for so long: what happens if you no longer want what they finally feel ready to offer? Surprisingly, that possibility does not send them running anymore. It makes them more determined to be honest. They understand that courage is not receiving a guaranteed response, it is respecting you enough to tell the truth without demanding the ending. The report will continue to be handled responsibly with medical professionals, but your soulmate refuses to let unanswered health questions become another wall between you. Stay till the end, because this is where their old pattern finally begins to break. Instead of waiting for the perfect day, the perfect explanation, or the perfect version of themselves, they choose the imperfect present. They prepare to tell you what they know, acknowledge what they don't, and admit the emotional truth that has survived every attempt they made to bury it. Then your soulmate reaches the point they have been approaching through this entire chapter. They are no longer asking whether they should speak. They are deciding exactly how honest they are willing to be once they do. And the answer surprises even them: completely honest. Not dramatic. Not exaggerated. Simply real. Something huge is waiting for you, because there is one final admission they have kept separate from every draft, every rehearsal, and every imagined conversation. It is not about what the medical report says. It is about what your soulmate secretly did during the period when you believed they had stopped thinking about you. They kept one small reminder of your connection close. Not because they were trapped in the past, but because they weren't ready to accept that the future they had imagined with you might disappear. And now they have decided to tell you about it, along with the reason they could never bring themselves to let it go.